Our theme for this past month, including the first week of October, is prosperity. What it is good. And today's topic is how much better can it get? I'm going to tell you a story about a Texas millionaire who had fallen ill. And though he had access to a whole staff of doctors, none of them seemed to understand what ailed him. So this millionaire let it be known that any doctor who could heal him could have whatever he or she desired. So this word spread far and wide, which is necessary to cover the state of Texas, as you know. And eventually, a country doctor in a tiny rural town heard about it. He got in his modest station wagon, and he drove to the millionaire's estate to minister to the ailing Texan. After about a week's stay, he declared this millionaire healed, cured. The man and all his medical staff agreed. So as the country doctor was leaving, with deep gratitude in his voice, the millionaire said, "Doc, I am a man of my word. You name it, and if it's humanly possible, I'll get it for you." Well, the doctor thought about that for a minute or two, and then he replied, "Well, I love to play golf. So if I could have a matching set of golf clubs, that would be fine." With that, he left. He went home. But he didn't hear anything from the millionaire for several months. And so he'd all but forgotten about the whole thing when one day he got a phone call from the millionaire. "Doc," the Texan boomed, "I'll bet you thought I had gone back on my word. But I have your matching set of golf clubs for you. The reason it took so long is that 2 of them didn't have any swimming pools. And I didn't think they were good enough for you. So I had the pools installed in those 2, and now they're all ready for you." How much better can it get? Obviously in this case, far better than that country doctor ever could have imagined. What a sweet story. So, how often do we expect and accept for ourselves that a matching set of golf clubs can be far more than 3 woods, 8 irons, and a putter? How often do we expect and accept for ourselves only that which we have already had or seen or constructed in our own thoughts? How often do we expect and accept in our spiritual practices to change our lives only to the extent that our current knowledge and understanding can fathom? How often do we forget those mystical, marvelous words, or better, when we do spiritual mind treatment in the acceptance step, in the 4th step, this or something better? You don't have to spell it out. The universe understands better. So that, my friends, is today's topic, today's challenge. How much better can it get in your thoughts, in your actions, in your life? Any of you read Shoe in the funny papers? The cartoon? Shoe? Well, for those of you who don't, Shoe is a kind of a morose little character who slinks around looking for things and ways to beat the system. In this particular strip, Shoe slinks into a bank, goes up to the bank teller and announces, "I'd like to open a joint account." The teller, with great disinterest, mumbles, "With whom?" And Shoe replies, "Somebody with money." And for many people, that pretty much is the story of their lives. Somewhere out there. Wow, what a great title for a song. Well, I'm sorry. Just being silly. Anyway, somewhere out there is someone, something, some way in the minds of so many of us, somewhere out there. But what about right here? What about right now? What about knowing that if anyone, anywhere, at any time has been successful, has been happy, has been fulfilled, has been at peace, then anyone, anywhere, at any time, also has access to all these things. I remember a talk Wayne Dyer gave once a long time ago that at the first time I heard him say it, it really ticked me off. But then he had a way of doing that when I first started listening to him before I found Science of Mind. He said, "What makes you think you're so special? What makes you think you're special and nobody else is? What makes you think that God would create some of us special and some of us not? If God has created us in its own image, and we do believe that, don't we, folks? Yeah. If God has created us in its own image, then either all of us are special or none of us are special. Well, that pretty much levels the playing field, doesn't it? In other words, you don't have to be special. I don't have to be special. Special is not what success, happiness, fulfillment, peace are all about. What they are all about is what we make them, each of us, individually, in our own lives. Dr. Holmes, in the process of founding and developing the Science of Mind, once said, "Our conscious thought operates through a power, which we call God, that's infinite. When we realize that, we see that there can be no limit to the power to heal, other than the limit of our own ability to conceive that power as a healing power. We're limited only by our own inability to see perfection. That's not terminal, folks. Inability can change, just like some of the things you heard in Standing in the Light this morning. It's a process. It unfolds as you work it. You see, our thought conjures up any imperfection, and our thought reveals perfection. Holmes challenges each of us to be the truest, the highest, the most noble, the most complete, the most peaceful. Now, listen to the monkey mind for a minute. Oh yeah, right, Virginia. That sounds wonderful and spiritual and so appealing. But you don't know what my life is like. You don't know what I have to put up with. My husband, my wife, those children of ours, my boss, my employees, my doctor, my lawyer, my accountant, the IRS, for Pete's sake. If only I'd have to deal with all those problems, all these people, all those distractions, then life would get better. Then life could be better. Well, here's how one couple chose to deal with interruptions like that. They owned a small deli, and they were being questioned by the IRS about their tax return. They had reported a net profit of about $80,000 the previous year. In frustration, the deli owner lashed out at the IRS representative. "Why don't you people leave me alone?" He said, "I work like a dog. Everybody in my family helps out. And this place is closed only 3 days out of the year. And you want to know how I made $80,000 last year?" "Not exactly," the IRS agent responded. "It's not your income that bothers us. It's all these deductions." He said, "You listed 6 trips to Bermuda for you and your wife." "Oh, that," the owner said with a smile. "I forgot to tell you we also deliver." So it just may be that we attract to ourselves that which is like who and what we are. Life is like that, as we all know. When we are courageous enough to stop and reflect on the events and the relationships in our lives. In fact, that is so prevalent. There is even a law named after it. It's called the law of attraction. And here's how it works. We are thinking beings, and we cannot stop thinking. And since creative mind, God, receives our thought and cannot stop creating, then it must always be creating something for us. In fact, just 2 days ago, I heard Marianne Williamson say, thoughts are not solid. They are not concrete. They were meant to be changed. So what the creative process is always doing and what it is doing depends wholly upon what we're thinking. What we attract will depend upon that on which our thoughts dwell. If you don't hear anything else this morning, hear that. That creativity and what we are attracting of it is totally dependent on what our thoughts are dwelling on. What that says, of course, is that God does not have some pre-planned or diabolical existence for you to live. God's job is to create you. Your job is to let God express through you. I heard somebody say one time that creating you is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift back to God. So your job is to let God express by means of you. Now, how much better can that get? So, the truth is, the way in which each of us expresses God through us is actually our idea of who and what God really is. Let me say that again. The way in which each one of us expresses God by means of us, through us, is our idea of who and what God really is. Well, that's not very good news to people who think God is mean, vindictive, plays favorites, and likes to see humankind suffer. But for those who think God is loving, kind, generous, healthy, abundant, peaceful, joyous, whoa, what a life these people experience. And then, when we can open up to the realization that God, that life force, that universal energy, is limitless in its power and in its desire to create, what a magnificent ride into unbounded livingness that can be. Because that creativity finds its only outlet through its creation. That's us. I have long believed that life is way too short to be pessimistic about. I mean, like, what if you're wrong? Then what? Here are some of the ways the pessimist views life. I always look both ways before crossing a one-way street. A pessimist. All my character defects can be blamed on my parents. The pessimist. No problem is so large or so difficult that it can't be blamed on somebody else. The pessimist. Good health is merely the slowest possible rate at which I can die. Wasn't that pathetic? The pessimist. Half the people I know are below average. The pessimist says, bills travel through the mail at twice the speed of payments. This is one of my favorites. I have 6 locks on my door, all in a row. When I go out, I lock every other one. I figure no matter how long somebody stands there picking the locks, they are always locking 3 of them while they're unlocking the other 3. I mean, actually, that's brilliant, isn't it? For a negativist. Here's another pessimist speaking. The golden years are really just metallic years. Gold in the tooth, silver in the hair, lead in the rear. And then, here's the coup de grace. I can't have everything. Where would I put it? Such are the views of the pessimist. But I believe that the law of attraction is always at work. If I'm pessimistic, the Lord, or the universe, the Lord too, the universe supports me in that. If I am optimistic, the universe supports me in that. And if I choose to be neutral, passive, unmotivated, static, guess what? The universe supports me in that as well. So what that boils down to is this. How much better it can get is up to me. Like the little boy who, confronted with the huge pile of manure in the driveway, exclaimed with glee, "There must be a pony in there somewhere." We are all confronted with choices every day, every hour, minute by minute. Why anyone ever makes a pessimistic, cruel, insensitive, or greedy choice is beyond my power to comprehend. But it's not beyond my power to choose something better for myself. The law of attraction always supports my choices. And when I'm clear about what those choices are, it supports them quickly and completely. So when I have created the mental equivalent of something better in my life, I must be ready to welcome it into my life. It's not just an intellectual exercise. As I'm getting clear on what it is I intend, I must also get clear on recognizing it and utilizing it. And that is what sometimes creates the lag time or the delay in its manifestation between the time I get clear on it and the time it shows up. Not because God needs time to create it. Come on now, we all know better than that. And not because God is still thinking about it, trying to decide whether or not we should have it. We know better than that. But because any delay in something better showing up in my life has to do with me, do I really know what it is I choose? Am I grateful for what I already have? Am I open to the possibilities that exist for me? Am I really willing to have it? To have him or her in my life? I watched a documentary on TV not too long ago about Randy Johnson. For those of you who are acquainted with Major League Baseball, you know that Randy Johnson was a left-handed pitcher. And for those of you who are baseball fans, you know that Johnson was one of the premier pitchers of all time. He struck out over 300 or more batters every season for 6 seasons in a row. He was a Cy Young Award winner. He was responsible for 2 no-hitters, one of which was a perfect game, and he won over 300 games. Not only that, he pitched actively at the major league level for 22 years, which is quite uncommon. There is no other left-handed pitcher in the major leagues, including both active and retired, who have equaled that. His accomplishments are legendary, and in the baseball world, truly astounding. When asked the secret of his success, he waved off the possibility that it was his height, because he's 6 feet 10 inches tall, or his wind-up, or his long legs, or the speed of the ball he threw, sometimes up to 100 miles an hour. His answer was, I believe that what you put into the game is what you get out of it. You see, the principles of life and the principles of the science of mind can and are practiced by people of all faiths, persuasions, and talents. The nature and spiritual, the natural and spiritual laws of the universe are not the private or special property of people who attend religious science churches in particular, or any other spiritual teachings in general. What we teach here and what we learn here are simply enhanced by surrounding ourselves with people of like mind, people who support us in developing our very best. How much better can it get? You tell me. Or more importantly, you tell yourself that it can and is as good as you choose to make it. You don't have to be special. Special is not what success is, what happiness, fulfillment, or peace are all about. What they are all about is what we make them, each one of us individually in our own lives. So be focused on what works for you in your life. Remember, it's the solution, not the problem, that you put your attention on. And just as a reminder, let me share this little story with you in closing. When the National Aeronautic and Space Agency, NASA, began launching astronauts into space, they discovered that writing pens would not work in zero gravity. Ink simply would not flow down to the writing surface. In order to solve this problem, they hired Anderson Consulting. It took 10 years and $12 million to develop a pen that worked in zero gravity, worked upside down, worked underwater, in a temperature range from below freezing to over 300 degrees centigrade, and on practically every surface. The Russians used a pencil. It doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be time consuming. It doesn't have to be expensive to be better. And so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you.